Welcome to Unit 2 Psychological Models of Abnormality, Session 10. In this session, we are going to continue with the psychodynamic model of abnormality. So far, we have discussed meaning of the psychodynamic model of abnormality and the two important key concepts or principles in this model, namely levels of consciousness and the structure and dynamics of personality. Learning objectives of this session: understanding the psychosexual stages of development. Next point is the fixation and the effect of fixation at any particular stage of development. Session outcomes: knowledge of the psychosexual stages of development, the knowledge about fixation and the consequences of fixation at a particular stage of development. Now, let us start our discussion about the psychosexual stages of development. Freud states that there are 5 psychosexual stages of development individuals undergo from infancy through puberty. At every stage of development, there will be a primary zone or primary mode of getting pleasure or libidinal satisfaction. If the libidinal urge or the demands are too much, then the individual resorts to the satisfaction of that particular urge. Next slide. The 5 important psychosexual stages of development are the oral stage, anal stage, phallic stage, the latency period, and the genital stage. Now let us first focus on the oral stage of development. This is the first stage of psychosexual development from birth to about 1.5 to 2 years. In this stage, mouth is the primary erogenous zone or the primary mode of getting satisfaction. The infant indulges in sucking reflex, which is important for his or her survival also. If an individual is fixated at this particular stage, meaning if they are fixated at the oral stage of development, then they will be into eating a lot, drinking a lot, being a chain smoker, being very gullible person, nail biting, biting their gums. All these things are the effects of being fixated at the oral stage of development. Next, let us move on to the anal stage of development. Anal stage of development is the second stage of psychosexual development. In this stage, the primary zone of pleasure moves from the mouth to the anus. Here, the child tries to get satisfaction or pleasure through retention and expulsion. This is the time when parents give toilet training to their children. Next slide. In anal stage, if the child is fixated, the outcomes are two. If there is anal expulsion, then such children when they grow up to be adults become messy, destructive, and also very hostile. Those individuals who are into anal retention, they will be very neat, being very fussy, being stubborn, being a perfectionist. Now let's move on to the next slide and the third stage of psychosexual development. Phallic stage. This stage ranges from about 3 to 5 or 6 years. In this stage, children derive pleasure by manipulation of their genitals. Next, fourth stage is the latency period. This ranges from about 6 years till about 11 or 12 years till they attain their puberty, when the sexual drives or urges are not so important because the child focuses mainly on the skill development and also in other activities. Next slide. In the fifth stage of psychosexual development, which is the genital stage, this is attained at puberty. At this stage, the individual derives pleasure by heterosexual sexual activity, or the sexual arousal and sexual intercourse helps them to gain satisfaction. Freud says that the sexual motives which were unconscious come to the consciousness and they try to gain their gratification. And Freud also opinions that appropriate satisfaction at any given stage leads to normal development, and if there is a fixation, it will lead to abnormality. The next slide. we will discuss about the Oedipus complex and the Electra complex, also referred to as the conflicts. Freud states that conflict at any given stage must be resolved at that stage itself. Oedipus and Electra complex or conflict are very important during the phallic stage of development. Oedipus complex means a boy like to possess his mother and he envies his father. Electra complex is experienced by girls when they feel they would want to possess their father and envy their mother, or rather they would want to replace their mother. This kind of complex or conflict will be resolved later by identification with the parent of the same sex. As I told you earlier, Freud emphasizes that appropriate satisfaction of any given stage is very important. Fixation is one that will result in abnormality. Now let's move to the session summary. To summarize, in this session we have discussed the 5 psychosexual stages of development, namely oral, anal, phallic, latency period and the genital stage. We also discussed that in every stage there will be a source of satisfaction or source of gaining libidinal pleasure. We also understood that libidinal demands are unpleasant and the individual will resort to the satisfaction of the same in that particular stage. Freud also opinions that appropriate satisfaction will lead to normality and fixation at a particular stage will lead to abnormality. Thank you.